Nu äntligen vågar man plocka fram bilderna från det som hände. Och det har fått stor uppmärksamhet, den här filmen. Så det kommer att bli jättespännande att ha det som avslutning idag på repressionstemat. Och att vi ska vara lite stolta över att vi tillhör rörelser som vågar stå upp oavsett vem det är som förfölj. Vilket ju var precis Jan Hammarlunds budskap i sången första, kommer ni ihåg det? Så att därmed så börjar vi. Och nu kommer det vara så att vi behöver engelska. Det är nog så att Oksana förstår svenska. Och det är till och med att det finns en fantastisk historia med varför hon nu försöker lära sig svenska som hon får berätta sen. Men hon själv kommer prata på engelska och det kanske kommer vara lättast om vi kör på engelska trots allt. Det är ju lite svårt och då måste vi tänka på att vara långsamma och så. We have to be slow as there are some people who have some problems really. But I think it's a step towards this interesting journey. We will begin 20 minutes with Oksana Shelisheva, and she will explain herself, her background. And then we will have 10 minutes with Ellie Sivat, who is in this time much active to defend all refugees and the asylum rights, who we now know is under attack everywhere, more or less. But she has also a background of recently occupying forests and being a chairperson of Friends of the Earth, so she has some background in the environment and climate movement, which we all know are also under attack. And maybe I will mention something about the peace friends who are also under attack. And then we will end up with some 20 minutes at least for questioning and so on. So please, Oksana, and it's a pleasure to have you here. So wonderful, simply. I'm so pleased. So please, take the microphone and put it on as well. Yeah.
Tack så mycket för inbjudan. Men jag kan inte diskutera på svenska. So I switched to English because it's kind of my second language. Well, you know, so it's kind of difficult to explain what I am and who I am in a couple of words. Because unfortunately the reality is such that if you Google my name, so you can come across all kinds of articles. When, for instance, I raise an issue of a Ukrainian woman who was targeted in Donetsk because she remained loyal to Ukraine in 2014, so you can find this piece in one of their Kiev portals. If I speak about women and children and civilians in Donetsk who have been subjected to indiscriminate targets. Yeah. So if I speak about civilians in Donetsk, so I'm a bit of concern to somebody. When I was in Russia and when I was the editor of the Russian Chechen Information Agency, so quite many people in Europe applauded our work to stop the war in Chechnya. And a few days ago, I all of a sudden got a message from a former colleague of mine in Russia, who is now a very anti-Putin, anti-whatever kind of person, who sent me a demand to my personal inbox: stop writing about Palestine. You discredit the cause. And what's the difference? Because I know that some of those who are now trying to stop those who speak for the lives of Palestinians, I mean from among my former colleagues in Russia, So they were criticizing Putin for indiscriminate attacks and carpet bombings of Grozny. So what's the difference? And that's that question makes my life quite difficult, because I keep asking this kind of question. Why one life matters more than another life? For me, lives of those in Chechnya, who many of whom are still my friends, so they are of the same caliber, they are of the same value as the lives of my family members, because another complication to my background story is that I can't tell what I am. I can't tell which of my hands is Russian and which of them is Ukrainian. Because I was born in Ukraine. My mother is Ukrainian Roma, also half Roma, because you know there are quite different ethnic groups in Ukraine. So my mother is a daughter of a Ukrainian Roma and a Greek woman. All Ukrainians, by the way. So my father is Russian. So what I am? My family is split. So some of them are in Russia, some of them are in Ukraine. I can't see my daughter. The last time we met was 2 years ago. It was all thanks to my Italian colleagues, because they brought my daughter, it was very Italian, to a big conference in the south of Italy. And it was all because they asked, the organizers of the conference asked, but what is the situation with your family? You know, so very Italian kind of question. I told, well, so complicated. So my daughter is Russia, so I can't see her. Well, and it was already 2022, after February. And they tell, oh, you know, so we will bring her to Italy. And they brought her, and they made this kind of well, it was an actual reward. So they made the gift. It was also November, and I spent 1 week with my daughter, and then she returned to Russia. And now it's even more complicated, because Finland, well, the Interior Ministry decided to freeze for crossing border points with Russia, and I can't even explain what kind of mood is now, not only among Russian-speaking. Don't think that it concerns only Russian-speaking people living in Finland. And it doesn't affect me, because I have no possibility to enter Russia, because Russia actually refused to issue my Russian passport already in 2011. And I'm a, well, kind of prohibited person to enter Russia. So it doesn't concern me, but just a day ago, when people started calling me, like very late in the evening, so I won't see my mother. I won't see my, well, so what to do? So my mother is very sick. How can I go to there? And it was also with people who live in Finland, but who come from Estonia, from Latvia. So it's very, very complicated. So this is my background. But right now in Finland, I signed a contract, a half-year contract with the oldest magazine of Finland, which is called Apu, and Apu means help. And this magazine exists in Finland for something like 90 years. And all of a sudden, another complex detail. So all of a sudden, I started to work there a month ago, and they've already published 3 articles, 2 about Palestine. One of them is the interview with the Palestinian ambassador to Finland and the Baltic states. Well, very tragic, because actually he lost 11 members of his family in the first days after October the 7th. And very interesting that my Finnish colleagues with this particular magazine, and believe me, I have had quite experience of cooperating with peace organizations of Finland, with different independent media outlets. And this is an absolutely mainstream magazine, like People's Stories. And all of a sudden, the editors of this particular magazine, they tell me, you know, we should find stories about people from different ethnic, national, religious backgrounds who live in Finland, who are friends with one another. And I listen, so it's kind of, is it, well, am I not dreaming? So is it really true? So there's my second article with this magazine. Was very simple. It was about beauty salons, which a network of beauty salons in Helsinki, which belonged to a Russian woman, where people from Russia, Ukraine, Estonia, Latvia, Finland work together. No problems whatsoever. Very simple story. I just spent some time in these beauty salons, talking to people, talking to these hairdressers, listening to their stories, and then telling these simple stories without any kind of political agenda. But it happened to be very powerful, because all of a sudden people read and they see, oh, it's a bit different from we kind of assume. So people, well, want to be friends with each other, and they don't have problems to find ways how to live together, despite all the traumas and tragedies and the cataclysm and whatnot. So that's my background. So there's, with regard to the matter of political persecutions in the East and the West, so what can I tell? For me, it's not a dilemma, because human rights belong to everybody, you know, so it's necessary to return to these basic things and to start repeat them as some kind of mantra. The life should be preserved. Rights should be respected, no matter whether people are from Middle East, Russia, Ukraine, and if those, or Europe, so, and if those violators of human rights belong to some kind of our side, our camp, but we see that they do something wrong, so why should we avert our eyes and pretend that we don't see what's going on? So actually, I had to stay in Finland quite long ago. It was 2008 when I came to Finland for 3 days, and I'm still there. So, and it was all because on the day of my plane departure, I received a phone call from Nizhny Novgorod, where I lived, from my colleagues, journalists, because Russia is complicated. So, and even those people who are not necessarily your allies sometimes can do good things. So I received a warning from such a colleague from a different media outlet in Nizhny Novgorod, and the person just warned that I shouldn't return right now, that I should postpone my coming back. I postponed it 5 times, and then I stayed. So, and you know, so this is something which I would not recommend anyone to experience. You know, when people think that a life of a refugee is kind of covered with roses, I remind you that there are a lot of thorns as well. And you walk not only on the carpet of roses, but you walk on the thorns. So far, I'm kind of lucky because I still have understanding and respect, and first and foremost, trust from my Finnish colleagues. I'm a member of the Union of Journalists of Finland. And so this experience of working together with Finnish journalists and the way how they see the what responsible journalism should be, so is quite is extremely positive for me. But at the same time, so I can tell that it's impossible for me to, for instance, to tell about the story of a young Russian girl who was sentenced to 7 years in detention camp, Sasha Skalchilenko, for, so it's kind of, it's absurd, but soon after Russia attacked Ukraine in this stage of the war in February, so Sasha followed some call of a radical feminist organization, and she replaced 5 price tags in a shop, real price tags, with similar looking, but with anti-war messages. And there was a pensioner who who paid attention to these tags. She alerted the shop owners, and they called the police, and now Sasha Skachilenko is in prison for 7 years. Why this case is very important is that it's, and also revealing fact that even the investigator, one of the investigators into her case, actually quit his job. And he is no longer working with the law enforcement because of the absurdity of the case he had to work on. And nevertheless, so Sasha Skachilenko was sentenced to 7 years of detention camp, which is not an easy thing for a young woman. At the same time, when I was looking through the media from my native city of Nizhny Novgorod, I came across an article, about another 7 years, and it was the ex-police who was driving drunk, and he killed a woman because of his driving drunk. Believe me, so he was also sentenced to 7 years in prison, but not in the detention camp, but in the so-called settlement camp, which is a completely different thing. So it means that he could be released soon as that there are no guards there, there is only administration of this settlement camp, which kind of supervises the inmates. So his sentence was milder. So Sasha Skachilenko with 5 price tags is regarded to be more dangerous than this ex-cop who killed a person. At the same time, just today, this is a coincidence, there was information with the Ukrainian media outlets, like about a schoolboy whose name is Vitaly Nesterenko, and this week, this Vitaly Nesterenko was also sentenced to 7 years there in Ukraine. And he's underage, so he received seven years. And the conviction is, so he's charged with informing their enemy about, the locations. So according to the Ukrainian journalists, so there is no proofs whatsoever presented in court that the boy really sent some photos to Russia. It's more likely that it was kind of a provocation just to get some statistics of the crimes opened and closed. And at the same time, in the case of this Vitaly Nesterenko, there were quite many witnesses who testified in his support, like telling that he had been helping Ukrainian volunteers, that he had been participating in the Ukrainian pro-Ukrainian activities, whatnot. So all these testimonies were regarded to be against him, finally. So the boys also said, you know, 3 people, Sasha Skachelenko, Vitaly Nesterenko, and this ex-cop, so they all received 7 years. But these 7 years mean different things. So there's, when I tell about all these things, it's not difficult for me because, you know, so it's like, so rights, it's again this kind of mantra. So we have this European Convention on Human Rights. No matter whether some countries like Russia or Belarus quit it, but at the same time, so this is our kind of Bible if we live trying to preserve human rights. So there's when I try to tell about these kind of stories, like also, for instance, in Finland, one of the very good friends of mine, so he's a Ukrainian journalist, Vasily Muravitsky. Actually, in the case of Vasily Muravitsky, he received political asylum in Finland. And the decision made by Finland in his case was taken also after February 22. And Vasily Muravitsky was a journalist, and actually he had been targeted by the Ukrainian authorities for many years, since 2017 at least. So he managed to flee, and he is now in Finland. And not long ago, Vasily Muravitsky called me and told that he had been put on the search list and by Ukraine. And in this case, so again, so he doesn't have any lawyers, he doesn't have money, so he's not protected by powerful journalist organizations, because, you know, so he's regarded to be toxic. Nevertheless, so he is the lawyer to himself, and when he was notified that the decision was taken to put him on the international search list, he appealed this decision via Ukrainian court, and believe me or not, but he won the case. So I tell these stories, which are not in the main media, also to show you that life is such a complex thing, and that we can actually do quite many things by just trying to keep to the matter, to the most important thing, and which is respect to human rights. So another person with whom I have been in correspondence for many years, he's also in prison, and by the way, also 7 years. I don't know, so it's like coincidence. He's a Lithuanian politician. His name is Algirdas Paleckis. And Algirdas Paleckis used to be a vice mayor of Vilnius. So again, so this is the person who I personally know and who I respect and trust enormously. So he's one of the leading people with social democrats of Lithuania. Why he's in prison? The official charge is that there are signs, not evidence, there are signs that he had an intention to commit a crime in interest of Russia. So there is nothing happened. So he had an intention. I always thought that to prove an intention is the most difficult task. This is kind of, yes, this is an absolute magic to prove an intention. But Algirdas Paleckis is in prison right now because of the intention to commit a crime in the interest of Russia. So Algirdas Paleckis is allowed to have correspondence. So I can't change his fate. So I just exchange letters with him. And believe me or not, this person from a prison in Kaunas is writing about the way how he's trying to change the life of other convicts in this prison by teaching them English, by composing music, playing the guitar. So he's also a very dangerous person. In the neighboring country to Lithuania, in Latvia, and this is also not a matter of interest to the major media outlets, there is a criminal case developing right now against 14 Russian-speaking journalists. Actually, they were initially under the same conviction and regarded within the same criminal case. But then some smart people realized that it would be a bit awkward to have 14 journalists on one court bench. So one case was split into 14 separate cases. And now the problem is kind of less, because actually now there are just 14 criminal cases against one criminal case against 14 journalists. I don't think that this is something that we should just ignore. I'm very grateful to one particular person in Finland. His name is Juha Rekola, and Juha Rekola used to be the international ombudsman of the Union of Journalists of Finland. So he's on pension now, he is sick, and nevertheless, Juha Rekola had tried hard to alert and to motivate major journalist associations to really do something to prevent the destruction of democracy in Latvia, which is a member of the EU, to take place. So far, it's happened not to be possible, because the counter activities are also quite powerful. So this is, in brief, yes, about
Ja, jag har ju känt Oksana i många år, och varje gång jag pratar med henne så är det ständigt nya sådana här fall, och som ingen annan uppmärksammar. Så att är det någon jag beundrar, och jag fattar inte hur hon orkar med att stå så här konsekvent upp för förföljda människor, oavsett om det är Tjetjenien eller Ukraina eller baltiska staterna. Så det är underbart att ha henne här. En extra applåd. Va? Det är alltså också så att hon förstår en del svenska. Och historien varför hon förstår svenska är ju lika fantastisk som hela Oksana. Ja, du måste. Ja, vi tar bägge samlat. Why did you start to learn Swedish? Mike.
So now I regret that I told you. Well, yes, there was a specific reason why I decided to start learning Swedish. And it was because of Facebook. More precisely, it was because of one advertisement which I saw published by the University of Turku, which advertised their language courses for the Finnish and Swedish languages. And it was okay. I wouldn't pay attention to that, but there was a comment, and the comment was in Finnish. And the comment was very aggressive. So it was a woman, and she wrote in Finnish, "Why on earth you advertise courses of Swedish in Finland? Soon it will happen that it won't be needed." I read it, then I read it again, and I felt really angry, and I decided to learn Swedish. That's the background of my interest.
Ja, sen är det då Elisivat och den är samma sak här, att det är ständigt den ena eller den andra oerhört viktiga flyktingfrågan och en skog som ska räddas eller nattåg i hela Europa. Så nu kommer ordet till dig, Eli.
Ja, tack så mycket. Ska jag prata på svenska eller på engelska? På svenska? Okej. Ja. Ja, men då så. Ja, det känns lite futtigt att sitta och prata om mig och liksom mina analyser av saker i Sverige jämfört med du också, Anna, måste jag säga. Så jag gör mitt bästa, men ni får ta det lite som det är. Ja, lite om mig själv. Som Tord försöker säga så är jag miljöaktivist och asylrättsaktivist. Jag har varit med i olika miljöstrider sen ett ganska bra tag tillbaka. Jag var till exempel i Seattle när det var demonstrationer där mot Världshandelsorganisationen. Jag var med i Göteborg också som det ska vara film om någon timme eller så. Och redan där så var det liksom väldigt tydligt att det blev en stor repression. Det inte bara att man sköt på demonstranterna utan också att det blev för stränga straffar efteråt för de som hade organiserat, inte ens begått liksom våldsdåd eller så. Och det blev mångåriga fängelsestraffar just här i Sverige. Jag var med i Köpenhamn 2009 när det var klimattoppmöte. Och då var det också så att man tvingade demonstranterna att sitta ner på gatan i december i flera timmar. Jag var också med i Paris 2015 då det också var klimattoppmöte. Och det var precis efter att det här hade varit terroristattacker. Så det var ett väldigt känsligt läge att vara i Paris. Ja, så det var lite grann om min bakgrund. Sen får vi se om jag kommer till skogsfrågan som jag sysslar med numera. Jag tänkte ta några kommentarer om nuvarande läge i Sverige, och det har vi hört ganska mycket om egentligen de senaste timmarna. Men vi har en regering som styrs av Sverigedemokraterna, där det är uppenbart att det är Sverigedemokraterna som håller i trådarna. Vi ser det i en rasistisk politik, inte minst på området asyl och migration. Och vi pratade just om de mänskliga rättigheterna, men mänskliga rättigheterna ska uppenbart inte gälla för asylsökande längre, om man ska gå på Sveriges regeringsförslag. Vi ser det i den offentliga debatten, att vi har en enorm högervåg. Det handlar om kriminalitet som kopplas till immigration, och det handlar om strängare straffar. Och det som sägs när man säger emot, så är man en känslomänniska. Det är det som man får höra. Liksom. Ni agerar på känslor. Men egentligen är det ju precis tvärtom. Egentligen är det de som agerar på känslor och inte på fakta. För att forskningen säger emot att det inte är strängare straffar som hjälper. Vi ser också NATO-medlemskap, och det har enorma implikationer. Det handlar om en enorm budgetförskjutning. Och som vi hörde tidigare, det går på bekostnad av investeringar i omställningen. Och fredlig beredskap och så vidare. Vi ser det i media, där det är jättesvårt att komma ut med en annan bild än det gängse. Jag tror att Sverige är ganska extrem i det avseendet, tyvärr. Det är väldigt lite utrymme för andra berättelser. Vi ser det också i en militarisering. Nu ska militären in i förorterna, de så kallade utsatta områdena. Eller som hela Malmö brukar säga, de är inte utsatta, de är politiskt försummade, de områdena. Det är decennier av politik som har försummat dessa områden. Och där ser vi effekterna av nu. Och nu ska man skicka in militär. Alltså det är helt befängt. Ja, vi ser det också i yttrandefrihet, demokrati. Vi ser det i den utsatta situationen för kurderna. När vi ska med i NATO, då ska vi blidka Erdogan. Och Erdogan kan komma med en lista. De här personerna vill jag ha utlämnad från Sverige. Vi ser att Migrationsverket utvisar kurder på anmodan av Säpo. Man hör inga detaljer förstås. Men man vet att Säpo gör vissa bedömningar. Varför gör Säpo det? Ja, så det är väldigt många frågor och det är ett väldigt skakigt läge skulle jag vilja säga. Man vet inte riktigt vilken grund man har att stå på längre. Liksom, var fattas besluten? Varför fattas besluten? Det är en dyster historia. Ja, om man ska säga någonting om asylrätt, då har det varit ganska dystert ganska länge. 2015 så var det en helt annan bild. Så kom det väldigt många flyktingar. Inte minst på grund av kriget i Syrien. Och det var konflikten i Afghanistan. Och många flyktingar hittade sin väg till Sverige. Men så slog det om. 180 grader ungefär. Och det blev precis tvärtom. I stort sett, jag ska inte säga i stort sett alla partier, för att det är 2 partier som fortfarande står upp för mänskliga rättigheter. Det är i princip Miljöpartiet och Vänsterpartiet. Men Socialdemokraterna till exempel, de försöker liksom konkurrera med Moderaterna och SD på en flyktingfientlig politik. Så det har vi sett effekterna av. Det finns nu en överenskommelse som beslutades 2021. Går ut på att permanenta uppehållstillstånd inte längre ges. Det ska bara vara tillfälliga uppehållstillstånd till att börja med. Det ska bli svårare att söka svensk citizenship, bli svensk medborgare. Familjeåterförening, något som forskningen säger är väldigt viktigt för kvaliteten i flyktingarnas liv, för deras vilja att integreras i Sverige, om man ska uttrycka det så. Har man en stabil grund vet man att familjen finns på plats istället för i ett krigsområde. Då är man mycket mer benägen att faktiskt jobba konstruktivt, tänka på hur framtiden ser ut. Istället för att vara orolig och inte kunna fokusera på det man har framför sig. Men nu sedan den nya regeringen så har det blivit ännu värre. Så nu ska man ha sådana här mottagarläger i stort sett, där folk ska sitta när de kommer och söker asyl. Man tittar på Danmark och då på de sakerna i Danmark som är det mest negativa för den enskilda asylsökande. Ska vara så restriktiv och repressiv som möjligt. Och så har man dragit ner på antalet kvotflyktingar, de som FN bedömer behöver vår hjälp mest. Så det är en otroligt dyster bild. Jag tycker också det går väldigt fort. Vi har haft 1 år ungefär med Tidöregeringen. Och de har lyckats lägga en massa förslag. Det som de också kunnat göra är att bygga på Socialdemokraternas initiativ. För att glöm inte det, Socialdemokraterna har startat en del av dessa utredningar. Som sen Sverigedemokraterna och Moderaterna bara hakar på och skärper lite. Så det är ingen positiv bild på den fronten. Jag ser det mycket, som Tord säger, jag är ju aktiv och hjälper asylsökanden. Så jag ser det väldigt mycket hur det drabbar folk. Folk som har bott här i 8 år. Ja. Och blir tvungna att fly till Frankrike. Ja, på EU-nivå så är det inte så mycket bättre. Man har en massa så kallade pushbacks numera. Trycker bort flyktingar. Kan vara på Medelhavet. Den där båtkatastrofen kostade 750 liv ungefär. Antagligen var det så att man försökte trycka bort skeppet som gjorde att det kapsejsade. Man försöker kriminalisera räddningsorganisationerna, NGO-arna som försöker rädda flyktingar. Ja, så det är en ganska mörk bild som sagt. Om man ska säga någonting om klimataktivisterna då. Där har FNs ordförande Guterres har sagt att klimataktivism borde inte straffas så strängt, utan i princip så säger han att vi måste vara glada att folk är aktivister och försöker att styra bort oss från klimatförändringarna. Men det som händer i Sverige är egentligen precis tvärtom. Numera så blir klimataktivisterna beskyllda för sabotage. Och då riskerar man mycket högre straffar. Så det blir mycket striktare följder, konsekvenser för aktivismen. Vad jag vet så har det inte riktigt resulterat i fällande dom. Alltså folk har inte blivit fällda för det, men har stått anklagade för det. Och vissa har vunnit, alltså har inte blivit dömda för sabotage. Så det är ju i alla fall någonting att i första instansen så får inte staten rätt. Det är dystert där också. Samtidigt som man kan säga att klimatrörelsen och rättviserörelsen är kanske större än någonsin. Jag ser verkligen någonting som händer där. Att det är mer folk ute på gatan och det är mer medvetenhet om till exempel sociala frågor i kombination med klimatfrågan. Så det är ändå på något sätt krafter i samhället som går i motsatt riktning, men vi får verkligen hoppas att det är de goda krafterna som vinner.
Ja, då har vi en kvart kvar för frågor och så. Jag såg att Marie reste.
I had a question for you, Oksana. And you were talking about these human rights crimes against journalists, or freedom of speech crimes. So they try to quiet journalists. But it seems to be a universal question. I mean, we learn a lot in Sweden about the horrible Russian society, and they are very undemocratic, and they are not allowing. But Ukraine and other countries are much better in democracy, and not to talk about the Baltic countries, but you talk about these crimes everywhere, or against journalists, trying to quiet journalists. Did I get that right? That it happens everywhere, especially in the East, that free journalism, free speech is stymied by the government or so?
Yes, it happens everywhere. And not necessarily in Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, or the East, or former Soviet republics.
Is it a trend? You mean everywhere?
Well, it happens in Malta. It happens in Greece. It happens in Italy. So this is a universal problem. Yeah. So, but. I see the core of this problem in this is kind of the effect of a snowball. When we allow one side to go unpunished for something which we condemn in a different place, so there will be definitely the third party which would allow themselves to do the same trick against journalists, because actually, so they might be also good for someone. They can be allies for someone. So it's become a vicious circle.
But is it worse in Russia than it is in, for instance, in the Baltic countries, or is
How
it?
can I compare? So yes, my friends have been killed. I have been banned from Russia because of my journalism. My friends, my colleagues have been imprisoned. One editor in Nizhny Novgorod set herself on fire a few years ago. So, but how can, well, but for journalists in Latvia, for these 14 media workers in Latvia, so is it moral to compare? Okay, so your 7 years sentence would be softer because you will be serving in the democratic prison.
You will still be serving in a prison.
So can it be, well, so how can we wait? So what is softer, what is easier? Because they are journalists. All of them are journalists. They haven't committed any crime. They were telling, actually, in this case of these 14 journalists, media workers, their sentence isn't even trying to make a hint of a wrongful information provided, of propaganda, of mistakes, of distorted information. No, there is no single sentence in their indictments with regard to the content of their articles.
And we have also Julian Assange, of course, who is in prison. And that's the other side, the American or the Western side have, for instance, incarcerated Julian Assange for similar crimes, I suppose.
What can I say?
He's a journalist.
I protested when I was in Italy together with my colleagues from Ukraine and from Palestine. Actually, we joined the protest against persecution of Julian Assange. So that's yes, this is universal. This is universal. So and also I mentioned this meeting, this big conference in Italy. Actually, that conference was my chance to learn very nice women from Gaza. And when this new tragedy started to develop, so my concern was whether they were alive. Out of 3, 2 are still alive. One of them actually was last in contact on the 13th of October, and since then, so Miriam is not reachable. And when I see in Instagram when one of these 2 surviving Gazan journalists, young women with children, appear in their accounts in Instagram, I can see that my friend Yumana, so she is getting thinner and thinner and paler and paler. And yesterday I managed to reach her, and I asked if Yumana has any hope to get out of Gaza. But she told that she would like to, but there is no way for them. So now there are some other citizens of other states being evacuated, also from American citizens and Russian citizens and Belarusian citizens, and there are some other countries are trying to take care of their citizens in Gaza. But actually, for Gazans, there is no way out of there. So, and they are also journalists. And when I published my article with APO based on 1-week communication with Humana, so now my editor with this Finnish magazine every other day sends me a message, Oksana, is she still alive? Yeah, she is still alive.
Hello. Jag vet inte om det hörs någonting i den här mikrofonen. Så. Va? Så. My name is Inger Roby. I've been living in Sweden since I was 7 years old, but I'm actually from Denmark and I have double citizenship. And I have also been very active in asylum issues and still am. So I'm glad that there still are some other people too who care about that. But what I wanted to say to you, good stories. We have discussed the problem of discussing Palestinian and Israel war. And I noticed that there are very few Swedes who know about the organization in Israel called Neve Shalom. It's called something else in Arabic too. But there are people from both sides who are living together in the village. I think it's since 50 years that they have been working together. And there was a little short news in the Swedish television recently, but it's very strange that there's not more emphasis on that, because that is almost the only thing I have ever heard about something that could give a hope for a possible solution for these two people to live together in peace. And I think that it could be useful for not only for you but for all of us in Sweden to learn more about that and spread more information about that possibility. Neve Shalom, it's fredens oas in Swedish. And they have a hard time now. They have had incidents where their school for both Arabic and Israeli people living together has been burned down. And in the situation now, they really have a hard time communicating with each other, but they have methods for how they can overcome those difficulties and still keep talking to each other. And especially the children are something that gives hope, because they really want to live in peace together. And we could learn a lot from them here in Sweden too, I think.
Well, thank you. I do understand your emotions. You know, I want to add two things. Long ago, when the second Chechen war started, my friends who already worked with the Russian Chechen Friendship Society, which I joined a bit later, so they decided to bring children from Chechnya for rehabilitation in Nizhny Novgorod. And it was just the very beginning of the second war. And there was a local TV station. They decided to hold a survey. And the question in the survey, I still remember it, so it was very kind of straightforward. would you agree to host families, children of Chechen terrorists? And it was live. You can imagine that the majority voted no. Still, children came to Nizhny Novgorod, a group of, they were something like 40 children. And they were concerns, safety concerns, what to do, how to organize it. And as I tell you, so Russia is very complex, so you might be surprised to find well-meaning people in the places where you can't expect them to meet. And in this case, it was the governor of Nizhny Novgorod region. Actually, he died already. And this man, his name was Ivan, so he met the organizers of this visit, and he told her, you know, bring them. And he arranged for the best summer camp in the vicinity of Nizhny Novgorod. And he arranged for the security guards around the camp. And no journalist was allowed to approach this camp. And then there were consultations with psychologists because, well, so maybe it would be better to bring the children to some friendly families just to get kind of used to life in Nizhny Novgorod. It's pretty different kind of reality. And psychologists told, no, you shouldn't separate children. So you should put Chechen kids together with Russian kids in this camp. They should be mixed all together. Believe me, so it would be fine. And then there was the official date for the big press conference. It was the only occasion when journalists were allowed to approach the children. And what they saw, those journalists, also those TV journalists, they saw a group of absolutely identical children who were singing the same songs, who were laughing, who were playing, and then they were kind of bewildered, so they didn't know who is who and which is which. And one stupid, sorry to say, but really stupid journalist approached a boy and he asked, tell me, are you a Russian or a Chechen? And the boy was smart. He responded, you have 3 guesses.
Ja, alltså först blir man ju helt förstummad och känner att ingenting är möjligt. Och sen känner man plötsligt att allt är möjligt. Tack så hemskt mycket, Oksana. Och även naturligtvis Ellie, som jag tror trots allt är det så att det är de osynliga handlingarna som bär rörelserna framåt. Så det handlar inte om att den ena gör mer eller mindre än den andra. Det är bakom Oksana och bakom Ellie finns ett oändligt antal människor som bidrar på sitt sätt. Och jag hoppas att vi kommer ju publicera det här på YouTube. Och jag hoppas ni känner precis som mig. Det här var fantastiskt att höra. Och att vi sprider det här inspelningarna efteråt. Därför att det här får vi inte höra i normala sammanhang. Och det här är inget normalt sammanhang. Jag är lite av den åsikten att vi ska vara otroligt stolta. För här träffas människor som gör saker och ting. Vare sig det är om man odlar i Hjulsta eller om man odlar i Edsele eller om det är så att man organiserar fredsarbete i en omöjlig situation eller ockuperar skogen i Växjö. Så därmed så menar jag att Ellie, och ni får säga ett sista ord, var och en av er.
Ja, men jag kan bara hålla med. Det här ger ändå hopp. I think this is we give each other hope despite everything. And it's really a good thing to be aware, to be critical about what we hear and what we see in the media. Make sure that we have different perspectives, that we take in all information and not only from one source. So I think that's very crucial, and also something that we can help our neighbors to do. So talk to our neighbors and the people at the workplace, and have thoughts about, or have talks about different views, different things that are happening in the world. I think that's really important. So I'll leave it to that.
Thank you. You know, when I arrived in Arlanda airport this morning, it was another coincidence. There was a woman walking in front of me in a black t-shirt, and there was a sign on her back: "Think, it's not yet illegal."